Hey everybody, thanks for checking out another Tides of Destruction battle report. This was a rare 2 games in a week for me because of the long holiday if you're in the US. Everybody has Monday off, so I was able to wrangle another game against a local Stormcast player who I've played quite a few times. In the past, they've been... the most recent game we played was kind of a blowout because I was playing my tournament style list, and then before that we didn't really get to finish our game because the store we were playing at was closing unexpectedly early. So this time we got to the shop nice and early and decided to play a 2,000 point game. I am continuing to take and experiment with an Ironjawz themed army. So you can see my list here. I have a Moonclan Grot Shaman, an Auric Megaboss with Battle Brew, a Frostlord on Stonehorn with Battle Brew. The Megaboss is my general. He has Ravager, just forgot to note that. 2 units of 10 Savage Orcs with Champas, 20 Grots with Spears and Shields, and there's 2 Fanatics hiding inside them. 2 units of Ardboys with dual hand weapons to get more attacks, and 3 units of 5 Brutes, 3 guys with double hand weapons, 1 guy with the Gore Choppa, and the champion has Boss Claw and Smasha, and then I still have my Iron Fist Battalion. So this is a little bit of a departure from the list I played in the previous battle reports. Now I'm taking some Brutes instead of so many Ardboys. Brutes are definitely the way to go for the most part. It's a lot easier to get them all in combat, and they generally hit a little bit harder. It's not that far apart, but the Brutes do hit a little bit harder, and they're the same points. So I did want to take some Ardboys just because I like their +2 inches on charges, and I like having the additional numbers, but that's something I'll probably play with going forward. Also, fortunately, my opponent has a small Ironjawz army, so I was able to use his Megaboss, his Brutes, and some of his Ardboys, so I have almost no proxies this game, which is awesome. It makes it a lot easier to do the battle reports for. So overall, this list is pretty straightforward. Again, I just want to get into combat as quickly as possible, start smashing people. The list is centered around the Ironjawz package with the Iron Fist Battalion, and then the Grot Shaman and the Frostlord are kind of their own little package. The Grot Shaman is just there to put Mystic Shield on the Stonehorn, and the Stonehorn is there to just kill everything because that's what Stonehorns do. So my opponent was taking Stormcast Eternals. You can see his list here. He has a Lord Relictor with Blessed Weapons and Mirror Shield, a Lord Celestant, who is his general and has the +1 attack trait. I don't remember the name of all the Stormcast Eternal stuff because I don't actually have their book, but he also has a Mirror Shield, and then he has a Lord Castellant with the reroll 6s to hit for shooting attacks Lantern. The bulk of his army is 3 Prosecutors with Javelins, a whole bunch of Paladins, 5 Decimators, 5 Protectors, and 10 Retributors, each with 1 Star Soul Mace. My opponent does not own enough Star Soul Maces to put 1 in each unit. I would have been okay if he just proxied them, but he wanted to play with what he had, so that's fine by me. 2 units of 5 Liberators with Hammers, and 2 units of 5 Judicators with Skyball Bows and the D6 hits bow on the champion. He also has a Skyborn Slayers Battalion and a Hammer Strike Force Battalion. So this army is a lot of stuff coming in from reserves. Everything in the Skyborn Slayers Battalion comes in whenever he wants, so that's very reliable, which is very good. And then the Hammer Strike Force Battalion comes in on a 3+ as per the normal Stormcast Eternal Allegiance trait, but if the Prosecutors come in, the other parts of the battalion, which is the Retributors, I believe, 2 units of Retributors come in as well and can be dropped quite far away from the Prosecutors, including in combat. As far as I read the rules and have heard from things like the old Warrior Brotherhood, you could set up in combat, was kind of the consensus. So we're both playing very mobile lists. Mine is kind of fast and good at getting around, whereas his can just drop where it needs to and kind of play that denied deployment game. The only thing that actually starts on the board is the Lord Relictor and the Lord Castellant because they're not a part of either of the battalions. Normally this would be a little bit more interesting, with the Stormcast Eternals probably having a pretty big scenario advantage, but because we rolled up Border War, we're just going to probably fight each other most of the game, and then whoever wins the big series of fights is going to be able to score both of the objectives. If this was something more like maybe 3 places of power, or something where you can actually score, like escalation, something like that, I think this would be a really fun game to play for the Stormcast player because you can do a lot with the battalions and their ability to come down wherever you like. But in this scenario, it's just kind of drop in my face and hit me with hammers, and I hit you with axes, and we'll see who's better, hammers or axes. So this is some deployment. I didn't get as many pictures of deployment as I usually do because the Stormcast have very little deployment. So you can see here, this is kind of me finished up. I have my armies spread out throughout a bit of the table. The brute unit closest to the camera is actually the one that has my Iron Fist boss in it. So I put them on the flank because I figured the Stormcast, bulk of the Stormcast army is probably going to come down somewhere in the middle, so they have room to breathe a little bit and operate, and also make a play for the objectives that do exist. So I wanted him kind of on the flank to protect him. And then the only proxy I have is in the background there. You can see the blue based unit of orcs with bows. Those are actually a unit of Ardboys. Everything else is exactly how it appears. So that's me kind of spread out throughout the table. This is a shot from my perspective. You can see here the Ironjawz models that I was able to borrow from my opponent Arturo. Very, very thankful for him. The Lord Relictor and the Castellant are in the background over there on the left. Just put them way out of range of me being able to do anything with them or to them really. So that was a good call by him because he doesn't want to lose either of those buffing models for free before his army can come in. And then this is my right flank, just some more brutes, some savage orcs, and nothing real special there. It's a close-up of the Stormcast heroes. And this is an overview of the table. The terrain for this game, the rock pile that I'm deployed in closest to the camera is mystical. The bunch of rocks that's kind of in the middle there is inspiring. The hill thing on the left is deadly. The rocks in the background left are arcane, I believe. Arcane or sinister, I think sinister. The rocks in the background on my side are arcane, and then the hill is inspiring as well. So not a lot that's going to impact the game probably. I did win the roll for table side and decided to take the side with the mystical terrain. Normally I don't like mystical terrain, but it can have some benefits for this army, and I don't have any kind of big centerpiece units that one is going to be a disaster for, except for the Frost Lord, so I just put him away from the terrain, and I really didn't want to deal with the deadly terrain just in case Stormcast decided to go first, or I wasn't able to get as far as I wanted to, and I had to just deal with running and charging through that terrain for the rest of the game. So I decided to kind of roll with the mystical and skip out on the deadly. The rest of the terrain doesn't really have any impact on the game, although some inspiring pieces are generally kind of good for me because most of the Stormcast army is immune to battle shock, which is one of the Skyborn Slayer's bonuses, while where my army is very much not immune to battle shock. So I ended up getting the first turn. Stormcast finished deploying before me. They only have 4 deployments because of the 2 battalions and the 2 heroes. I had quite a few more than that, so wasn't really anything to be done there. And I figured I was going to go first anyways because everybody likes to play for the double turn. So this is just me kind of advancing. I drink my Battle Brew with my 2 heroes, and Mystic Shield goes up on the Frost Lord. All pretty standard stuff. The red unit on the far right that's depicted here was too far away from a hero to be able to move with Rampaging Destroyer, so that's a bit of a misdeployment on my end. That's something I'll have to definitely keep track of as I play this army more, is making sure that all these spread out units, that they have a hero in range, at least on the first turn, to be able to move up. But everything else was able to get up and move quite far because most things have both an Iron Fist movement and a Rampaging Destroyer plus 2 inches movement because of Ravager. This is my center. I tried to move up aggressively with the Frost Lord to see if I could get maybe a really long charge on one of the heroes. He does move quite fast, but I think I rolled a 1 on the Rampaging Destroyer, and I ended up not running very far with him either, so didn't really work out in my favor there. This is the left side, just advancing up, and this is an overview of my army where I ended my turn. The Ardboys, that are, oh no, I'm sorry, those are Savage Orcs. The Savage Orcs on my left flank and the Brutes in the rocks that have the dice in front of them both failed their mystical checks, whereas my proxy unit of Ardboys and the Grots both passed their mystical checks. So not terrible, but a little bit worrisome because the Brutes are in a position where maybe they can get some pile-ins depending on what happens, but they're not going to be able to do that now because they failed their test. So a little bit of punishment for the mystical terrain there. And then I didn't end up actually moving the Frost Lord forward because I would have had, I think, an 11 or a 12-inch charge on the Castellant, which is very unlikely to be made. I don't even have his command ability to reroll charges because he's not my general, so I didn't see a reason to move him so far out and then let him get piled on by the Stormcast army without me being able to, get any pile-ins or anything like that to kind of help him out. I figured I'd probably lose him for free if I did that, so I decided to just keep him back, and then we'll see what happens when the Stormcast Eternals start dropping in. So this is Stormcast turn 1. This is the Hammerstrike Forest dropping into my backlines. Prosecutors barely had room to get in within 9 inches and still be where they wanted to be with everything, but they made it. So the Retributors up there actually just deployed into melee with my Savage Orcs, and then the other unit of Retributors just kind of got put down. They're pretty close to my Ardboys as well as my Frost Lord, so they have a couple charge targets, and then the Prosecutors are just hanging out in the back waiting to shoot some people. This is the Skyborn Slayers Battalion. The Judicators came down on the friendly objective for them, and then everything is kind of just deployed in like a crescent around or in front of my army. Had a couple things that are a little difficult to unpack for him, so you can see that the Decimators, I believe, are behind the Liberators there, and the Lord Castellan is also behind a couple units. So that's going to possibly make it a little hard for him to unpack the army if charges don't go his way or something like that. I think it would have been a little bit more beneficial to intersperse some of those units, so make sure that each one has like 2 or 3 guys in the front and the rest are in the back. That way they all get to try to charge no matter what, and then if he rolls decent values and they get to pile in, he can get more guys in. So just probably a small positioning mistake there. This is the Prosecutors shooting. They managed to kill the Grot Shaman pretty easily. Didn't think I was going to be able to keep him around very long this game, so he kind of died as I expected. The only other movement that I didn't get a picture of here is the Lord Relictor and the Castellan both ran. Just trying to run towards the middle to get into the game, but they're not going to be able to make it for just a little bit. And then this is shooting all the Judicators pumped into the Stonehorn. He actually only took 2 wounds. I mistakenly put down 4 because I just wasn't thinking and forgot that he halves wounds from all sources. So he only actually has 2 wounds on him. But he did fail 4 armor saves, which was pretty bad. He actually failed 4 in one batch. So there was 4 wounds and I failed all 4 armor saves, needing a 3+. So that kind of sucked. But then he made the rest of them. So he's damaged, but definitely not out of the game. This is the charge phase. I released my Fanatics on turn 1 and managed to pin the Protectors and 1 unit of Liberators from charging, so that's pretty good for me. And then that really kind of compounds what I was talking about earlier, where certain units are behind certain other units, and now he can't move his front line, so those other units aren't going to be able to do anything. They're just going to stand there. They won't be able to fight this turn, even go for a charge, because they have way too far to go. So that was good for me, and definitely capitalizing on a positional mistake there from the Stormcast Eternals. This is a unit of Liberators getting into my Brutes. I was pretty confident about this combat because Brutes are just better than Liberators to start with, and I'm also in cover, so I have really good armor save, so I'm okay with that charge, and I'm looking forward to that combat. This is the Retributors making it into both of my units of Ardboys and the Stonehorn. Again, I feel pretty good about this combat. I figure most of the attacks are probably going to go into the Stonehorn, but he's going to be able to mess up that unit in return, so I'll at least get some work out of him this game, hopefully. This is combat, so my opponent started with the Retributors. They put some attacks, I believe the Star Soul Mace and a couple other guys, into the Stonehorn, and did some wounds, and then they also killed off 2 Ardboys, so pretty good swings from them. Yeah, this is me up to 6 wounds, so I think that was correct. Yeah, I think this was me having them because the Retributors do mortal wounds on a 6 to hit, and then they have a Star Soul Mace and a couple other things. So, and then they do 2 damage base, I think. So yeah, they were able to put some good work into my Stonehorn there. I countered with the Fanatics because Fanatics are actually a lot better in combat than most people give them credit for, so I always like to get some attacks off with them if possible before my opponent kills them because they die extremely easily. They managed to actually kill 2 Protectors, which was awesome, so that unit is greatly weakened. This is the Retributors into my Savage Orcs, the ones that got dropped into combat. I'm pretty much writing these guys off because Retributors are going to really easily kill them. They are very good at killing Savage Orcs with their Rend and their 2 damage apiece and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, we'll do what we can there. This is actually a picture of me after I attacked with them. I managed to kill 1 Retributor with only 10 Savage Orcs, which is pretty good. So I was very happy with that outcome. This is the Protectors having put down the Fanatics, as I expected. And this is the Frost Lord having gone. He killed all of the Retributors by himself, which is pretty likely, honestly. So I was happy to see 1 unit gone already. And then this is the Savage Orcs post attacks from the Retributors, so they kill 5, and I believe had a floating wound as well, so that unit's already in bad shape. And then this is Battle Shock. I lost another 2 of my Ard Boys from the damage they took from the Retributors because I no longer have a unit within 3 inches. I don't get the +2 Bravery bonus, which actually ended up costing me. I think I rolled like a 5 or a 6 on these guys, which was unfortunate. The Savage Orcs didn't run anywhere, so that was good. They took more damage but didn't actually end up fleeing. And then this is, to go back just a little bit, this is the combat with the Brutes. I managed to kill all of the Liberators except for the Champion, only taking a wound in return. So again, that's another combat that's kind of gone my way. So the first turn, I got charged a lot, but managed to make out pretty well. My Stonehorn is almost half dead, but I've pretty much dealt with a unit of Liberators, I have dealt with a unit of Retributors, and then some of the other units have taken some casualties. So winning the melee war just a little bit without having taken too much damage in return, but I do have to worry about the fact that there are enemies on my objective, and my opponent is a little bit more mobile than me at this point because I'm kind of pinned between a rock and a hard place. So I have Judicators on his side, which I definitely need to deal with at some point because otherwise they're just going to stand there and shoot me all game, and that's really going to add up. But if I go back to my own objective where he has a unit of Retributors and a unit of Prosecutors, then I'm kind of writing whatever I send back there off for the rest of the game as far as being relevant in scenario and relevant if they even manage to deal with those units. So I had to do some thinking about that. Unfortunately, didn't have to do too much thinking because we rolled for initiative and I lost. So I got double turned by the Stormcast Eternals. Not the worst thing in this case because my opponent's pretty light on shooting and I like to fight, as does he. So it's probably just going to be a lot of combat and I'm not going to just, you know, get shot off the board or anything. But would have definitely liked to have gone and maybe, you know, gotten some of my bigger pieces into combat or something like that, but wasn't to be. This is just another shot of that combat at the end of my turn. Okay, this is top of 2 for the Stormcast Eternals. The Lord Castellant, or I'm sorry, the Lord Celestant uses his command ability to give everybody +1 to hit, which is particularly nasty on the Judicators. And then this is Blessed Weapons going onto the Castellan because he was the only thing in range, and the Warding, or the +1 armor save Lantern going on the Lord Relictor because once again he was the only thing in range. Definitely glad that those 2 characters are kind of out of things for the moment. They didn't roll very well on their runs and they're not super fast, so keeping the nice bonuses from them out of the game for at least 1 more turn. Alright, this is the Prosecutors shooting into the Stonehorn, and oh, this is just a run roll for the Lord Relictor, so that was just a few seconds past. They're just moving back over, trying to get to the combat, or the center of the board at least. Oh, I'm sorry, this wasn't shooting, this is just them, the Prosecutors moving up and trying to keep distance away. So this is the rest of the Stormcast army moving forward. Liberators kind of taking the charge along with the Protectors, and then the Retributors are going to move around back along with the Celestant. Celestant goes over and is going to try to take out some of the Brutes, and the Judicator is back up a little bit nearer to their own objective, but still within range to shoot everything that they need to be able to shoot. And this is just some more movement, getting the Decimators. I always get the names of these Paladin units mixed up. These are the ones that get extra attacks for how many guys are within range. But yeah, they're moving up to probably get into the Grots, which is a really good target for them. This is 9 wounds on the Stonehorn after the Prosecutors and I think the Celestant shot. The Celestant actually rolled 6 hammers this turn and wounded with all of them. So that's 6 mortal wounds, which I cut in half to 3. So anything else would have just gotten pasted by that. But yeah, I was like, whoa, that's really good. And then this is after the Judicator shot, so I'm left with 2 wounds on the Stonehorn. I've absorbed all of his shooting for 2 turns, but definitely would prefer my Stonehorn to live and fight a little bit more because he's really good against Stormcast Eternals. This is the Celestant making a charge into the Brutes to reinforce the Liberator champion. And we have a charge from the Protectors into the Stonehorn, which is likely going to spell his doom because they have a Star Soul Mason there and I only have 2 wounds left. And this is, so we go into combat and the Protectors start. You can see that the Liberators and the Decimators also got into combat on the left over there. So the Protectors start and they managed to kill the Stonehorn with just the Star Soul Mace. He got 3 wounds, rounds down to 2, so I got dropped there. Unfortunate, but when your opponent dedicates a whole bunch of offense to one thing, even if it's really resilient, it's probably going to die in Age of Sigmar. This is me going with the Brutes. I put all of my attacks, except for a couple guys, into the Celestant, managed to kill him, which is great because no more +1 to hit, and he's also a good fighter. The Liberator champion was still left alive, which is kind of annoying because I was hoping that if I could kill him, then I could get a unit of 5 Brutes into the Judicators, which would really mess them up. But unfortunately, my couple of guys that got to attack the Liberator champion didn't roll very well, and I wasn't able to take him down. This is the Decimators into the Grots and the Liberators as well. Netters really came up big here. -1 to hit is really bad against Liberators. It basically makes them do nothing. And then the Decimators didn't get quite as many attacks as they maybe should have been able to, because I kind of, not on purpose, but just positioned my guys well to not get them all within range. So I only lost 5, which was not too bad. And then this is the Retributors on my right center flank, taking out the rest of the Savage Orcs, as I expected. Like I said, I'd already written that unit off, so I mean, the fact that they even held them up for 2 turns is fine with me. This is the Ardboys piling into the Protectors. I managed to kill 1 and wound the champion, so the Star Soul Mace is going to be the last survivor there. And then this is the Liberator putting another wound onto my Brutes, so almost 1 down there. And just kind of an overview of the combat after the Goblins pile in. I think they managed to kill... Yeah, they killed 1 Decimator, which was awesome. They actually rolled really, really well, and then he rolled pretty poorly for his saves. So I'm kind of chipping away at some of these more elite units, which is definitely good for me, especially with Grots, which are not in this list to do any damage. And then this is Battle Shock after all the combats. I lose another 6 Grots because I lost 5, so I'm already Bravery just 5 because I have at least 10 models. But then the Decimators give you -2 Bravery for just existing, I guess. So I was already losing 2 guys, so it could have been worse, but yeah, whatever. Grots are meant to die. And I believe this is just an overview of the kind of giant developing combat in the middle. So you can see my Ardboys are trying to pile in a little bit better, and my proxy unit of Ardboys are just out of being able to pile in. Otherwise, they'd like to get in and help, but just not close enough. All right, this is bottom of 2, so my turn. Battle Brew goes up on the Mega Boss again, and I'm kind of preparing to move forward and to the right with everything. This is my proxy unit of Ardboys moving backwards to deal with the prosecutors. They're down to 6 models from 10, and I don't really have much room for them in the combat in the middle, so I figure they can take out or not take out, but at least impact the prosecutors because they're not very good in combat, so that's a good job for them. And I also need some stuff to be on my objective because if I push this unit forward, all I have is a couple of Ardboys on my objective for contesting, so if he were to put a lot of wounds into that unit and I was forced to remove them, then my objective would be open and I could just lose the game then and there. This is me moving up in the middle. I kind of have one unit of Ardboys horizontally lined in the back there, and the other one's kind of in like a weird fortress shape up front. So I'm hoping to get both of them into combat, but I don't have that much room because of the grots. This was actually probably a mistake on my part. I should have retreated the grots this turn. They did their job, they took the charges. Now it's time for them to make room and let the brutes and the mega boss and maybe the savage orcs as well get in there and do their thing. But they're just taking up tons of space right now, and I actually didn't end up retreating them, so that was, like I said, a bit of a mistake in hindsight. This is post charges because I have no shooting, obviously. So I get the mega boss into the decimators and one unit of brutes with one model into the decimators as well, because there's not enough room to get them in through the grots. And then I did not charge with the other unit of brutes that's at the bottom of the frame there. I don't remember why, to be honest with you. I don't know if they failed or what happened, but yeah, they didn't get in. And then the Savage Orcs managed to get in kind of around the back there. So that was good because it shields my Mega Boss a little bit from getting countercharged. And I mean, they're just a chaff unit, so they're there to take up space, but they weren't blocking anything from actually getting into melee that I wanted to melee. This is the Ardboys also getting into the Prosecutors. They had a pretty short charge, and they get +2 to charge range, so not very worrisome there. Alright, so I started off with my Mega Boss. He kills the Decimators down to just the Star Soul Mace, so that's very good. That's another Paladin unit almost wiped out for me. The Protectors went back and killed a just one Ardboy. Didn't do very well there. That was all the Star Soul Mace putting in some work. And then I go with the Ardboys, killing one Prosecutor and putting a wound on another one. So not quite as much damage as I kind of hoped to do, but I was hoping to take out 2 of them. But definitely, at least took out 1 model, and they're locked into combat with me, so they're staying there and fighting it out, or they're going to retreat, in which case they're not going to do anything. This is the Brutes taking out the Liberator Champion finally, so now they're freed up to go do something else. If I manage to win the initiative roll this time, then they'll be able to get into those Judicators, which would be fantastic. And this is the Ardboys attacking in the middle. They managed to wipe out the Protectors. So yet again, another unit of Paladins down, some kind of whittling away the more elite troops. And then that was actually the end of my turn. We have no battle shocks to make of any relevance because all of my stuff either died or didn't take enough casualties to actually need to take a battle shock. The Grots didn't get attacked this turn. The Liberators and everything else is putting wounds into the guys that matter a little bit more. And then, like I said, a large part of the Stormcast army is immune to battle shock because they're part of Skyborn Slayers. So now, as it stands, I have a little bit more control over my objective. I still have no ability to get to my opponent's objective. It's being camped by like 10 Judicators, and I'm kind of locked up in the middle. I think I could have done more damage this turn had I retreated the goblins. Like I said, I could have easily gotten more brutes in there and really started beating up those Liberators and probably finished off the Decimators as well, as it is the only one of them survived, but still rather kill them off. So if this was a mission with scoring involved, I'd probably be at a bit of a disadvantage here because I have so much in melee and not really anything left to move around freely, whereas the Stormcast army has a couple units that can, get around and do whatever they need to. I have a unit of Retributors in my backfield that's not occupied by anything else, so I assume they're gonna, get stuck in eventually. But I'm not super worried about it because um, if I'm able to whittle them down a little bit and hurt the prosecutors a little bit more, I'll leave my opponent without 5 models in my backfield, and you need at least 5 models to be able to control an objective. So then I won't be able to lose if I can get that. We rolled for initiative again. I managed to lose the roll again. So once again, the turn goes over to the Stormcast. And top of the Stormcast turn, this is +1 armor save Wardian Lantern going down the Liberators. They're hit the last full strength combat unit he has, and they're pretty tanky anyways, so this puts him at a 3+ armor save, rerolling 1s because of shields, so that's going to be kind of a pain to chew through, especially because I don't have a ton of high rend. I mostly have a lot of rend 1, but that's not going to eat through them really, really fast. This is straight into combat, I believe. For the movement, the prosecutors did retreat from the Ardboys, and the Retributors in my backfield moved towards the Ardboys to try to get a charge. And then the heroes also moved up. The Stormcast heroes also moved up to get a charge into the big combat that we have developing there. This is the Judicator shooting. No, I'm sorry. This is the Lightning Storm from the Lord Relictor into the Brutes, doing 1 wound but giving me -1 to hit. Here's the Prosecutors retreating, like I said earlier. And this is the Judicator shooting into the Brutes, taking out 1 and then finishing off the wounded one. So a little bit less combat potential from that unit, but it definitely could have been significantly worse for me in terms of their output. I think they didn't roll so hot this turn, so I was able to make some saves, and my opponent didn't convert a lot of wounds. And then here is the Castellan and the Relictor getting into combat, like I mentioned. This is the Retributors. They needed a 5-inch charge, but they actually ended up failing it on a 3, so that's really good for me because they probably wouldn't have been able to really almost finish off that unit of Ardboys, and I don't think I would have been able to do a ton back to them. So that could have, like I said, made my objective a little bit more dicey. I think that my opponent should have retreated the Prosecutors onto my objective. He did have range to it, to get in, he had the ability to get into range of it, but he went so far away that even if the Retributors get in, he's only going to have 4 models on my objective. Now I'm still contesting with the Ardboys, just at you can barely see the yellow one on the left-hand side there of the frame. But if he dumped some of the Judicators shooting into that unit and stuff like that, he might have been able to kill them enough to make a scenario play and grab the win. But that's not what happened. So here's combat. The Lord Relictor and the Castellan kill a couple of my Savage Orcs, and I intentionally delayed activating my Mega Boss so that I could take some casualties from the left-hand side where the Savage Orcs were conga lined, and then have him pile in. He managed to do so and then kill the Lord Relictor, which is awesome because it gets rid of some buffs, and it also gives him +1 wound and +1 attack with his Choppa for the rest of the game because of his special rule. This is the Castellan just fighting, as well as the last Decimator making his stand. That's my turn. Okay, so yeah, I didn't take a lot of pictures this turn. My apologies for that. So the Castellan ends up taking a wound from the Savage Orcs, and I'm pretty sure that the last Decimator Star Soul Mace goes down to the Brutes and the Goblins, and then my Ardboys basically bounce off the Liberators, and they bounce off of me. The Liberators are still being affected by a netter, so they're not putting out much damage because they need like 5s to hit, which is really bad for them. But then they're also 3+ saves, rerolling 1s, and I have no rend from the Ardboys, so I'm not doing much to them either. So we're kind of just slap fighting it out there. Again, nothing in the way of battle shocks to go for this turn, so we're kind of just fighting it out in the middle. This is bottom of 3 for my turn, so I managed to move the big boss or the mega boss as well as the remaining brutes and get a charge onto the Judicators. You can see here that I was able to kill all but the champion from the back unit with the mega boss. Let's see here, and this is the brutes having gone. They kill 2 Judicators and do a wound to another, so definitely reduce my opponent's shooting output. I did forget to wog this turn, I remember that, so I could have gotten some extra attacks probably, but I just forgot to use the command ability because I'm not used to these guys, so didn't even have the opportunity to do so there. This is the full strength unit of brutes that are heading back towards my objective. They're going to not only help contest, but also get into the prosecutors and the retributors. And this is the ongoing combat. Yep, so I've taken some damage on the Savage Orcs here, and I guess I didn't kill the Decimator last turn, so he's still around. Yeah, he has 1 wound left. The brutes managed to put him down though, so he finally goes down this turn. And then I think I put another wound on the Castellant from the Savage Orcs. He's just been failing all of his armor saves with that guy. And this is me putting killing off a ton of the Liberators. Even though they had a 3+ save this turn, I rolled pretty well for my hit and my wound dice, and then just a ton of 2s for the armor saves. So I managed to put down 3 of them, which is huge because that unit was probably going to tarp hit me for quite some time. So now they're putting out not only a lot less damage, but there's a lot less of them, and I can kind of maneuver around if I need to. This is the pile-ins for the Judicators. Oh no, I'm sorry. This is a little bit jumbled mess for the pictures. So yeah, like I said, the Judicators didn't manage to do anything back in combat. My brutes got into the prosecutors, the brute unit that I moved over in the previous picture, which is these guys. So they managed to get into the prosecutors, killed them pretty easily because there was only 3 wounds left to guys there, and I intentionally got them into combat so the retributors could not pile in because I don't want them to be able to do anything just yet. I didn't do anything with the Ardboys, the small unit of Ardboys left on my objective. I actually just moved them more onto my objective so that I can make sure I have control of it, even if the prosecutors didn't die. So now my opponent only has 4 models in my backfield. He can't control my objective. It's going to be very hard for him to get through my army. So now we're kind of looking at either me getting a major victory or being able to play for the minor victory. So that was kind of what I pivoted to at this point as far as my strategy goes. So we rolled for initiative again. I lost again. So this is top of 4. This is the aftermath of the shooting for the Judicators. They managed to kill off 2 more of the brutes. As you can see there's only 1 remaining, but the Mega Boss is still in good health. That's the only shooting he has. And then the Castellant also put Warding Lantern onto the unit of 2 Liberators again. It was either between that or himself, and he already has a 3+ save, so I think Stormcasters try to keep what guys alive they can, and sort of play to keep me off of their objectives at least, because I don't have enough models to score his objective in the backfield either. This is post-combat there. You can see that all the Judicators are gone. The Mega Boss took them all out by himself very easily. And then this is part of the combat in the middle. I kill another Liberator, so it's just the champion left against the Ardboys. They've taken some casualties. Looks like they're down to 8 at this point, but like I said, the Netter, which you can see there on the left, has been really causing problems for the Liberators. Only the champion was ever out of range of him. And they were pinned in within 2 inches, so he was just giving them -1 to hit the whole time. And then this is the Retributors getting into my Savage Orc unit. They only managed to kill 1 and do a wound, so really poor rolls there, which was very lucky for me. And then I managed to do a wound back, so not too much damage output from me either, but my unit didn't get blasted away, which I was definitely excited for. And then this is... Oh yeah, I'm sorry, this is the end of the Judicator combat where my Brute actually died. Oh no, he did not die. I'm sorry. He ran away from battle shock. So yeah, his two friends died from shooting, and then he took off in the battle shock phase, which was kind of a bummer because now I just have the Mega Boss in the backfield. But what are you gonna do? And okay, so now this is over to bottom of 4. This is my turn. I've retreated with the Savage Orcs towards my opponent's objective. There are exactly 5 of them left, so that's going to be enough to hold the objective. And with no guns left on the Stormcast side, I don't have to worry about them being reduced below that number. So I was able to capture the Stormcast objective there. Now I just have to deal with the Retributors and get my objective. The Mega Boss moves forward and is going to try to take out the Castellant to stop, Warding Lantern and take out kind of the last melee element from the army. This is my Brutes getting into the Retributors in my deployment zone, because, like I said, I need to be able to take them out to actually get a major victory for the game, so that's my charge in with them. and this is combat for them. I managed to kill one Retributor with, I think, the Ard Boys? I don't remember. And then, yeah, this is the actual post-combat. So I think the first one was the Ard Boys, and this was the Brutes. So they leave just the champion standing. The other three are dead in the background there, as you can see. And then, yep, that's the last photo of the game. So what happened at this point is the store we were playing at was closing in about 15 minutes, and I have control of my opponent's objective. I did manage to kill the Castellant, not with the Mega Boss, but the Mega Boss put him down to 1 wound, and then he got finished off by some Brutes. So we're in a situation where my opponent has 1 Liberator left and 1 Retributor, and I have control of his objective, and then there's 2 more turns left to play. So we decided to call it there. My opponent conceded, so that's a major victory to me. Probably, just saving some time there, because it's very unlikely that I wouldn't be able to finish that last Retributor off in 2 turns, especially because I'm going to get 1 more turn, and from there all I have to do is run the Wog with the Mega Boss and run him as close as I can towards the combat down there, which should be pretty easily done with all of his movement options. And then I can give possibly +1 attack to everything, as well as the War Boss rerolls to the Brutes, and then like I said, very unlikely that I don't finish that guy off. So it should be a pretty easy win from there, and then the last Liberator is just drowning in attacks and stuff, and he's not in position to do anything anyways. So, major victory to me. If you would like to hear my thoughts about the game, I'll talk about those for a few minutes, but if not, now would be a good time to check out of the video. Thank you for watching if you decide to do so. I try to put up about 1 battle report a week, sometimes a little bit more. So if you like these, please feel free to drop a comment or subscribe, or whatever you want to do. And thank you for watching. All right, this is my post-game discussion about the battle report. So I think this game was actually really good. It probably looks a little more like a blowout than it actually was, because I would have ended up basically tabling the Stormcast army by the time things were all said and done, and the only thing that I fully lost was the Grot Shaman, the Frostlord on Stonehorn, and 1 unit of Savage Orcs, so a little bit over a quarter of my army, but not by much. But that being said, there was a lot of weird combat rolls in this game, where my opponent did a lot of misses or didn't get many wounds, so that definitely went my way. And then I actually rolled quite well for the Brutes most of the time. Got some mystical rerolls for certain units at key times, which was very helpful, and things like that. But I think the biggest deciding factor in the game was the slide I showed where the Skyborn Slayers battalion came down, and they had the Liberators in the front, along with the Protectors, with the Celestant and the Decimators in the back. Because they were deployed like that, when I charged with my Fanatics, I was able to pin all of that stuff back. So the Liberators and the Protectors couldn't move forward, which means the things behind them couldn't charge either. They did need a little bit decent rolls for the charges, but they could have at least tried. So that's why I said, I think interspersing those units, having a couple guys from each unit in the front and then a couple guys from each unit in the back, would have allowed him to charge, or at least attempt to charge, with everything. The Fanatics can't be everywhere at once, so it's unlikely I would have been able to block everything from charging. And if he'd gotten into the Fanatics, or I'm sorry, into the Grots a little bit earlier or something like that, he probably could have punched through them, maybe denied me my Netters, which were extremely important in this game, because the Netters were consistently giving -1 to hit to his Liberator unit, his Decimator unit, the characters a little bit. Yeah, they were just all over the place, giving everybody -1 to hit, and that was what really was swinging the combat in the center for me. That being said, I actually think Netters with Ironjawz are extremely good. I've played 2 games with it now. The last game I played against Fire Slayers, they didn't come up too much, but this game they did big. So I think in the future I'm actually going to run full Moonclan Grots for my battle line, because they're only a little bit more expensive than the Savage Orcs, and they're just a little bit better. They get +2 inches to the run, which makes them really good for setting screens and just kind of getting out of the way when they need to. retreating them is not the end of the world because they don't have a huge damage output and they have smaller bases, so it's easier to kind of get more guys in combat around and through them. And then, yeah, like I said, the netters are just brutal because if you get into combat with a unit of Grotz that has netters and a unit of brutes or a unit of Ardboys or something, you're kind of between a rock and a hard place. You can either put attacks into the Grotz and hope to take out the netters, with a nice battle shock roll or something like that. But if you do that, then I get to attack freely with my melee units, and they're not going to take any damage back. And if you attack my melee units and ignore the Grotz, then you're just going to be stuck at -1 to hit forever, and I'm probably going to just slowly win the attrition war because I have dice advantage in most situations. So I think that's a really good way to go forward, and I'm definitely going to experiment with that. I've actually been putting together a list that uses not only the Iron Fist Battalion, but the Great Moon Clan Battalion, if you have checked that out from the Orcs and Goblins Compendium section. So I will probably try to play that army in my next battle report. The list is actually looking to be really, really fun, so I'm looking forward to that. So look for that in the future. Like I said, the main turning point in the game, I think, was the lack of charges on turn 1, forcing his more elite units not to get in combat until turn 2, and then the fact that the scenario is just bad for Stormcast. Requiring 5 models to control an objective is very annoying for Stormcast Eternals because they're a very, very elite army, obviously, and their units generally don't get bigger than 5 guys that you take. So if they lose even 1 guy, you then need a second unit or a hero or something to go capture an objective, and that's just asking a whole lot of that army. I think Border War is very, very hard on Stormcast Eternals. Had it been one of the more normal missions where you can rack up some points or something, especially something like Escalation, I think I would have been at a really big disadvantage. I would have had to spread out very far and probably throw some guys away into losing combats just to either keep things even or keep my head above water. So that just kind of goes to show you how much a scenario can make or break you. I think if we played again and we played almost any other scenario, probably, I would feel like I was disadvantaged and have to make some very different plays. But as it was, the scenario kind of favored me, or was at least neutral, so I got to just punch it out, which is what my army wants to do, and I didn't have to really worry about too much. My mistakes this game were deployment was the biggest one. I deployed too spread out, so it was a little hard to collapse in when I needed to. I did manage to get it done, but I thought it was going to be easier than it was because I have Iron Fist movement and Rampaging Destroyer with +2 inches, and then my army is not super slow. It's not fast, but it's not, I guess it is pretty slow. It's like Nurgle speed, but I wasn't able to get as many guys really tight in together as I wanted to. I was hoping that even though I was going to get alpha struck, I was going to be able to do lots of pile-ins by having my army just really tight in together, but I didn't position them well enough to do that. So I think the better thing to do would have been either to kind of bubble wrap my more important stuff with my Grotz and my Savage Orcs, and then still have my brutes and all that stuff within range to do some pile-ins, or just kind of pick a flank or something like that and go on that and force him to either drop on a flank or to drop in the middle to make a scenario play, but then I can kind of spread out and see where things go from there. So deployment was definitely a big part, and then the other big mistake was, like I also mentioned in the battle report, not retreating with the Grotz earlier. Once they took a charge and didn't die, I should have gotten them out of there, so I could have gotten 2 full units of brutes in, the mega boss, all that stuff, made room for the Ardboys, and I just would have been able to bring a ton of quality attacks to bear on a quickly dwindling Stormcast Eternals army. But as it was, the Grotz just hung around for way too long and were taking up a lot of room. I did want their nets to be in the combat, but losing the nets at that point wasn't going to be that big of a deal. It was time for me to start removing models, not mitigating models. So that was me just being a little bit too defensively minded, which is generally how I play, but with this army I need to kind of get over that. So it was me falling back on instinct more than actually thinking about my situation. I don't think my opponent made any real big mistakes other than the deployment issue that I mentioned. I think he also could have been a little bit more aggressive on the scenario. As it was, he ended up winning the initiative roll every single time. Obviously, you can't plan for that, but there were a couple turns where I think if he gambled on the scenario, he could have possibly won on it. The one that I mentioned was where the Retributors failed a charge. Now, if they made that charge, they probably would have been able to uh, handle my orcs a lot better, because they would have had at least two combat phases with them in. Now, of course, they did fail that charge, but if he made that charge and put the Judicators shooting into my yellow unit of Ardboys, between that and some of the melee attacks, he might have been able to either kill enough or do a big enough battle shock roll that my contesting units would have been quickly evaporating. And at that point, I'm in panic mode, and I'm either going to lose on scenario or I have to start making like crazy plays, like just retreating with everything to get on my objective and not fighting and stuff like that. And then I'm really at a disadvantage there. So it's hard to say if that was the right thing to do or not. I probably wouldn't have gone for it, but analyzing the game critically, I think it might have been the right play, because at that point it was kind of clear that he was losing the war. The table was going against him. You know, I was breaking through. I'm going to get into his Judicators. His objective might fall. His units are kind of crumbling. He's losing models left and right. So at that point, it might be time to go for kind of an all-in play. I do say that in a lot of battle reports. Like, it's really important to recognize when you're behind or when you're at a disadvantage and play to your outs, which is usually the scenario, or like a big assassination or something like that on a hero. It's like holding their opponent's army together. Even if it's unlikely, it's just something to go for to give yourself a chance at winning instead of just slowly bleeding out over the turns, and you know, your opponent's advantage is just compounding against you every turn, where, you know, like, you're not doing much damage to them, but they're doing more damage to you, and the next turn you don't do any damage to them, they do more damage to you, and then it's just, before you know it, you don't have anything left to fight with or play with, and the game is just a foregone conclusion. So this game was probably a minor example of that. I've certainly played games where that were much more classic examples of that. But yep, overall a well-played game. No extreme dice one way or the other. We both had some batches of bad rolling, but you know, everybody has their ups and downs throughout the course of a game, and it was really fun to play another just a big melee fight. So I'm going to keep working on this Ironjawz list. I don't think that, certainly Ironjawz are like a tier 1 competitive army or anything like that. They're never going to be able to deal with like Cunninruk, Skyfires, Kurnoth Hunters, Aether Strike, stuff like that, the really oppressive shooting list for tournament play. But they do have a place. I would probably say they could be a solidly like tier 2 army, you know, somewhere in there with like the good Khorne builds and Tomb Kings until they get nerfed, stuff like that. The more fair, quote-unquote, melee armies that do melee well, which I think is a good thing, because as the next General's Handbook, you know, gets closer and closer, whenever the GW decides to release that, I think that most of the strong shooting units of the game are going to get heavily nerfed, and some of the melee armies are going to get buffed. We've already seen with the leaked pictures that Fire Slayers are getting a buff, and I think Ironjawz are also in line for one as far as cheapening their units. They're just overpriced everywhere. Like, their shaman is horrifically overpriced for no reason. He's not even good. And then like Ardboys and Brutes are probably 20 points overpriced, something like that. So getting good with this army is not only fun to play with, but it's also kind of future-proofing me for competitive play moving forward, where I think the game will have less of a shooting slant and go to more of a melee game, which is, I think, what GW intends for it, because Age of Sigmar just plays brilliantly when both players have a little bit of shooting and a lot of melee, as opposed to all shooting, where it's just a battle of initiative rolls and making sure you have less deployments than your opponent does, and a lot of really weird things like that that if you follow the competitive meta, the game is turned into. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Most of my battle reports will probably be with the Ironjawz armies from here on out, unless I go into like a tournament or something, which I don't think I have any on the upcoming calendar, but you never know what's going to happen. So yep, those are my thoughts on the game. Feel free to drop me a comment if you want to discuss anything, and thank you very much for watching.